First of all, I'd like to formally acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of these lands and pay my respects to the elders, both past and present, to acknowledge the many VIPs and parliamentarians in the audience, and unfortunately many of you having to stand at the back, but it's always good to have a full house. It's my great pleasure to be here today to accept the Australian Multicultural Advisory Council's People of Australia document. It's also a great opportunity to be in this particular institution. A quick look in the ship just before we started, and as a £10 pom, it started to bring back memories. And so I'll take a few minutes at the end, I think, to have a bit of a wander through. But it's a great setting for such an occasion. I'd like to first of all echo Laurie Ferguson's sentiments and express my personal thanks to Andrew Demetrio and all the members of the Council for their time, efforts and insights. They're all busy people. They're all people who make a huge commitment in their own fields of expertise. And as I stressed them when we asked them to take on the role, we didn't want patsies, we didn't want yes people, we wanted people who had something to contribute. And that, I think, has been reflected in their work. It also probably meant Andrew's job was a little harder because they all have strong opinions and something to say. But that's what you want when you're doing this sort of work. You want that contribution, that contest, and the different perspectives that come with it. I believe today marks a new chapter in the history of multicultural policy, because multicultural policy must speak with a broad voice and should benefit us all. This is a document about all Australians and for all Australians. The work of this Council takes a practical approach. It is a statement for this century. It's concise and accessible and goes to who we are and what we value. The themes of AMEC's policy and the substance of its recommendations sit across multiple areas of government. However, this statement is only the first step in a robust body of work that AMEC has been asked to deliver to government. The statement is important, but the work that follows it is equally as important. It is the reason why Laurie Ferguson and I will be recommending to the government that the committee be reappointed for another 2 years of work, and we've asked the members of the committee to continue. I've got to be careful how I phrase this, because I suspect it's got to go to Cabinet, but we have asked Andrew to continue, and he's indicated he will, and if I get rolled to Cabinet, Andrew, I apologise. I'm sure it won't be a problem, but I'm very pleased that he's agreed to continue, and we'll be looking to reappoint the members of the Council as well, because as I say, we see this as a beginning, not an end. We are looking for the Council to work with the Department and other government agencies to translate the type of strategies outlined in the statement into government policy, to turn things into practical outcomes. And over the course of the AMEC's next term, I've asked them to assist with the development of a long-term strategy for increased settlement in rural and regional locations and high employment areas. We need to ensure that people settle in communities where they find a job, rather than settling in communities where they are destined to join the job queue. People who come to Australia, be they refugees or migrants, want to integrate and to contribute. The government needs to work to identify those opportunities. I've also asked the Council to identify policy initiatives that work at the neighbourhood level to strengthen local communities, the sort of work that Laurie was talking about. In every street in Australia, families should be able to depend on their neighbours, have their children play in safety, and to know that a helping hand will be extended to all. Government needs to support the conditions that nurture trust, community goodwill and participation. People of Australia is the title that I think invites reflection. For a large part, we are a nation comprised of people who have chosen to be Australian. 45% of all Australians who are born overseas or who have at least one parent who was born overseas. Whether this generation or 5 generations ago, our families committed to this nation and its ideals. We are a land of 22 million. We speak about 400 languages and identify with more than 270 ancestries. Among the countries of the world, we are unique in our breadth and balance of cultures. At the time of the last census, 8,000 Australians identified their ancestry as Estonian, over 100,000 as Croatian, 700,000 as Chinese, and 89 as Berber. We're a country formed by migrants. Since the end of the Second World War, more than 7 million immigrants have made Australia home. We have integrated them quietly and largely without discord. In a little more than a century, we have moved from a series of agrarian colonial outposts to a modern industrialised state. From the Snowy Mountain hydroelectric project to the Sydney Harbour Bridge, we have relied on the flow of labour from abroad to build this country. As the people of Australia makes clear, we are not multicultural by accident, but by design and necessity. It was Australia that called for industrious families to help bolster our workforce, farm our land, fill our factories and run our ports. This is a statement that reminds us we are multicultural by fact and by intention. It is the character of our composition, it is a product of the way we have built this nation. That we should have in place policies to promote our multicultural status seems beyond question in this day and age. Yet for the better part of the last century, the policy that underpinned migration and settlement was assimilation. A policy that asked that migrants should give more than their labour and their loyalty. It obliged that they shed all vestiges of their past. A white Australia policy would ensure migrants looked the part, and assimilation would make them indistinguishable from the social norm. Of course, by the end of the 60s, the contradictions and tensions of discriminatory strategies saw those policies begin to unravel. Historians will always argue cause and effect, and we've had enough of the history wars in this country. Was it the economic imperative to broaden our source of labour, or the changing social climate? But whatever the trigger, policies that go against the core values of a democratic nation are never sustainable. It is telling that the end of the White Australia policy came shortly after